Well, Sheri, thank you for joining us on the Rising Beyond podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so you and I have had several offline conversations, so I know a little bit about your story, but can you share with our audience, as much as you're comfortable, your story and kind of why you do what you do?
Sure. So, I am a survivor like so many people that get into this work. My abusive life started very early. I was a toddler when I actually lost my virginity to my father. My father and my mother had myself and a younger sister who eventually passed away. So they adopted three other kids and basically took them out of the frying pan of foster care into the fire. After 15 years, so I was a junior in high school, my father was finally arrested. He was prosecuted, but because he was the primary breadwinner, he was allowed to do pretty much 6 weekends in jail. Um, he was originally charged with multiple counts of felony sexual assault, domestic violence, all of those things, but everything was plea bargained down to a misdemeanor.
Mm,
And a lot of that was because it was just kind of our word, and we were all traumatized kids. I was the oldest, and I was
yeah,
17. Um, and then, of course, when you grow up in that kind of environment, I talk about it like it's no big deal now. It absolutely was a big deal. But when you've had that many years to talk about it, it becomes easier to talk about. Um, but after growing up in that kind of childhood, that's what you know is the norm. And so it led to a series of train wreck relationships afterward, um, most of which were abusive. And I guess 22 years ago, I escaped out of my last abusive relationship. Um, I snuck money, I hid all my important documents, and on the sly bought my own house and was able to escape. And that was really kind of the line in the sand for me,
yeah,
as far as saying, okay, I have my own space. I'm going to make it a safe space, and I'm not going to deal with this anymore. But that means I have to figure out how to create difference when somebody's handed me all the plans to build this beautiful house and all the tools to build it, but no instruction manual of how to use the tools or what pieces to use first and what kind of foundation to build or any of that. I use that analogy a lot because I think it's really important. People can say, well, you have all the best tools, you have the you're safe, you're in a safe place, and there's all these therapists out there and all the stuff that you can do, you should be happy.
yeah,
Well, it doesn't work that way. I don't know how to use this tool. I don't know what these screws and these nails are used for. So it was a lot of learning, a lot of emulating people that I saw that were, in my eyes, powerful, strong people that I could use as a basis to start to build what I wanted to become and who I wanted to identify with. Um, so I'm by profession, I'm a marketing professional, have been for many years. I've had my own consulting business. And in 2016, my daughter, who was 10 years old, came home from school one day. One of her friends had been being picked on a lot. She was a sensitive child and would cry when things made her upset, and the kids picked on her. And so she did all the things that we're told to do, right? We'll tell the teacher what's going
mm-hmm,
on. She told the teacher, and then the kids found out that she told the teacher and picked on her more. So she went to the guidance counselor, and then the abuse got even more severe because people were getting called down to the guidance office. This was in elementary school.
yeah,
And so my daughter came home one day and said, I just don't know what to do. I wish there were a way that she could report it privately so nobody knew. I wish there were a mobile app. And I looked at her and thought, well, the best way to empower her. And I just said to her, well, then figure out how to build one.
Hmm.
And this is a 10-year-old, what am I thinking telling a 10-year-old go build an app? But that's exactly what she did. I didn't put any of my limitations on her. So she spent hours in her room doing hour of code and learned how to, the basics. One of the companies that I was partnered with had a development tool, and she used that to build her science fair project, which was an anti-bullying mobile app. That really, she ended up winning all kinds of awards for that, and
Hmm.
that was really the spark that, wow, I have all these 29 years of experience through um, my own lived experiences. And I like to say that I am a survivor of criminal, civil, and multiple family courts, probably as much, if not more so, than the abuse itself. And one of the things that really clicked for me was the fact that I documented like crazy. I journal, I document. Everybody in a position of authority says, document, document, document,
Yes.
document everything. But what they don't do is they don't tell you how to document. What they don't tell you is most of what you document will either be destroyed by the abuser, you'll delete it because things get good and you want to get rid of all the evidence, or all the work that you've done may put you in jeopardy of being harmed if it's discovered. And even if it's not discovered, the courts aren't going to accept it. It's hearsay.
Yeah.
They're not going to take it. You can't prove that you wrote that when you did. You can't prove that what you're saying actually happened when you say it happened. You have nothing. And so all these words of wisdom from people in positions of authority to document everything meant nothing.
Yeah.
So the light bulb of my daughter's app combined with the um, the investigations that I did. So in 2017, the National Association of Prosecutors wrote a study and published the findings that nationally, 80% of domestic violence cases are largely dropped due to a lack of evidence, court-worthy
Yeah.
evidence. And then they did a revision in 2021 and found that that really hadn't changed. So that's really when the light bulb went off. And I took her idea and spun it out to make something that if you're going to tell someone to document, make it documentation with teeth.
Yeah.
Make it hold up in court. Give someone that legal voice. And so that really was the spark that started Victim's Voice.
Yeah. And I was thinking as you were talking about the documentation, because I am one of those, it's like document, 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 right? And what does documentation look like and what can it be and what should it be and all of those things. But there's also this piece of you're documenting, you've got all your co-parenting app messages and all these things. And then court comes up, you have to go back through all these messages and all your stuff, and that is triggering all in and of itself as well. So that is also this area of like, if it's not organized or put somewhere, you're going to have to spend hours potentially
Yeah.
scrolling through those messages and talking parents or our family wizard or whatever. And wow, that is not a fun time.
No,
That's not a fun time.
not at all. And one of the things that was really important to us in building this company was, well, many things, but one was making sure that there were enough of the right voices sitting at the table because, as I said earlier, I have my lived experience, but my experience is very different than other people's experiences.
Mhm.
In a lot of ways, there are a lot of similarities, but I got lucky. My father was prosecuted. There's a lifetime restraining order. There are so many people that can't even get a restraining order. Um, So it was really important to make sure that those people that were at the table also had teeth.
Hmm.
So we built a very strong functional expert advisory board, and we have immigration attorney, we have estate planning attorney, we have a employment attorney, we have a former prosecutor, we have a law enforcement officer, we have business and financial advisors. So we have uh, LGBTQ healthcare professionals. We really made sure that we brought all those voices to the table. But beside all the normal voices that you think about when you talk about the United States of America, there was a whole group of people that were here before we were the United States of America. So for me, it was really important, me being a white woman in this country, that not only did we have people of color at the table, but we had indigenous voices at the table, and that we made our app legally admissible to help navigate tribal jurisdiction and legal compliance in tribal courts. Because so often it's the native indigenous people of a land that are forgotten when these tools are created.
Yeah.
And so we didn't want to leave those people out. Um, I say those people because I'm not that person. I come from a very colonizing ancestry. So it was really important to me to listen to those voices and make sure they were heard as much as anyone else. Um, One of the other big things that was really important was that I know from my own experience that I documented a lot on the emotional side.
Hmm.
But a lot of what I considered to be very abusive behavior did not rise to the level of criminal behavior.
Right.
And what's documented oftentimes is the emotional or the coercive control behavior that in almost all states is not yet illegal behavior.
Hmm.
And so we had to make sure that we were asking questions that were pertaining to how the laws were written across our land. Um, One of the biggest complaints we get about our tool is, well, you don't allow for audio or video. You don't allow us to upload audio or video. Well, that's because in addition to making sure you're documenting what's legal or illegal behavior, we also wanted to make sure that we're going to protect you from yourself.
Yeah.
And when you're documenting, we are held to the mercy of the device that it's being documented on. So I live in the state of New Jersey, and New Jersey is a one party consent state,
Hmm.
which means that as long as I am part of that conversation, I can legally record it.
Yes.
However, my neighboring state, which is literally 10 minutes down the street and across the river, is Pennsylvania. And it is a all party consent state. And it is an all party consent state that you have to have expressed consent. And if you don't have expressed consent, it's a felony.
Yeah.
So if you record an abuser and you don't have expressed consent on record, you've just committed a felony. And you better
Like,
bet that they're
excuse
going
me,
to use that
sir.
against you. Yeah,
You're about to abuse me. I'm just going to hit record. Can I get your verbal consent on recording that it's cool that, that I'm recording this abuse? Okay, thank you.
right. That you're about to beat the crap out of me. Could you please, give your verbal consent? That's not going to happen.
Right? Oh my gosh.
And if you try to upload something like that, you've tainted all the evidence now. And
Yes.
you've you've also exposed yourself. And as soon as you hand that report over to someone in a position of authority, it's now what's known as defense discoverable. So if you hand your report and all your files over to your attorney, and you're going to court, your attorney has to let the courts know that they have this document and this evidence, so that the defense attorney, your abuser's attorney, has the right to review all that information before
Mm-hmm.
court. So if that file contains illegally obtained audio or video, you've totally screwed yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what we tell people is, if you are in a place where you are allowed to record and you talk to someone of a legal profession that can give you that advice that it's okay, then document in our app that you have that file and where it's being kept and when you recorded it and how you recorded it and all that information. You can then, that ties that to your evidence. But don't do that until you talk to an attorney and make sure that it's legally obtained.
Right. And it's like, is this audio recording? Is this video recording? All of those things play in, because we are also a single party recording state for audio,
Yes.
but not video. So
Right. Right. And oh, Florida makes it even better. If you are 17 years or younger, and this is not legal advice, by the way, I just want to preface with
yep.
that.
Neither of us are attorneys. We are not
Nope.
giving you legal
Nope.
advice.
But if you are 17 or younger and you are being abused, you can record without the abuser's consent. So Florida is an all-party consent state
Interesting.
with that exception. However, on the day of your 18th birthday, you have to get consent.
Hey, I recorded this. Can you just sign off on it so that I can send it to the authorities?
And that became really prevalent. There was a news story when a 17-year-old girl was being abused by her father and hid a camera in her bedroom. And that's the other caveat, that a bedroom is a place of expected privacy.
Yeah.
But because it was her bedroom and she was recording and she was under 18, the courts allowed it. Now, the other thing is that as we found out with the Amber Heard Johnny Depp case, audio and video doesn't necessarily prove your case.
Yeah.
It can actually be used against you because they're going to say it was taken out of context, and there's all sorts of variables. So before you make any decision to record someone, definitely seek legal counseling. There's enough attorneys out there that you can have a free consultation with.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely bring that question up and find out if your specific situation allows for audio or video, and if it's even going to help your case at all.
Yeah.
So those are just some of the types of things. Another complaint that we get sometimes is that, well, I recorded for a while and everything is good and I want to delete my account. Well, we're bound by law to hold evidence. And statute of limitations, because we have to go with the furthest out statute of limitations, it's pretty much never.
Right.
So we can't delete your account, but it's there if you ever want to get it again. You know, we're not
Yeah.
going to share it. We can't share it. And just as a caveat, we don't even know who our users are. They get
Mm-hmm.
assigned a database ID. So you can reach out to us and say, hey, I want you to delete my account. But we don't know how to delete your account because you're telling us your name. You may be giving us your email address, but all we see is a database ID. And we do that to protect the user, but we also do that to protect ourselves from being subpoenaed and forced into relinquishing records.
Yeah. And I think it's so important to think about privacy, safety. And I feel like I learn, right? Like I'm going to learn as I keep doing the thing, but I don't have a Facebook group because
Yeah.
that is not actually safe for my audience,
No.
right? Like it doesn't matter how private I make that group, someone can get in there. So when I started, like we have a separate platform where we have our forum. I'm talking about the Rising Beyond community. So we have a separate platform. And then, right, and I was like, good to go. You have to pay. There's passwords, all the things. And then heard a horror story from a colleague where certain people made it onto their kind of platform that is similar. It's a little bit different than mine, but that was similar. And I was like, nope, okay, I don't want abusers seeing Rising Beyond on a financial disclosure
Yep.
in a family court case, being like, what's that? Looking it up and joining.
Yeah.
Right. So now we need like proof of identification, and I need like the first time I see you, that camera's got to be on. It's got to match all the things before I'm like, sure, you can be in our forum. Like, sure, you can join us. Right. And so you just, safety and privacy is so amazingly important for so many reasons, but for this audience specifically, it is one of the most important things that we can do if you're working in this space, is be as safety privacy conscious as possible.
You have to assume that every communication that you have with a victim slash survivor is potentially going to be a life or death situation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we work it. We work our tool under the assumption that everyone who tries to communicate with us and say, I need help accessing my account, or I can't do this, we have to assume that it's the abuser trying to gain access. We don't know who you are because we work to make sure the anonymity and the privacy. So by de facto, we can't, even if you send us a driver's license, we don't know who that is.
Yeah.
So we've set up a lot of steps along the way to ensure that there are ways for them to access their account without making it, um, vulnerable. We also don't communicate outside of our tool so that we don't
Mm-hmm.
send text messages or emails or anything. Our whole process behind the scenes ensures that their privacy and their anonymity is always held intact.
Yeah. Yeah. And right, like, as you're healing and maybe you're out there listening and your level of trust for people in general is a big nothing, like you're in the
Right.
negatives, you are in the negatives in the trust factor. um there are those of us out there that really are looking to protect you, and so just knowing these pieces and these things, um and the transparency of why we're doing what we're doing. Right? If I've had one or two people be upset that I'm like asking for an ID,
Yes.
you don't fully understand the scariness of my clientele. So you probably are not a good fit for our program. Or you're an abuser trying to hop in, right? Like,
Right.
or
Right.
you're an abuser trying to hop in. And so I'm sorry you don't get to be a part of our team, our program, and our tribe. But I think that that transparency of why are we doing what we're doing, we are going to try and protect you at all costs. That's
So
what
do I
our goal is.
do I get to be a little controversial on here?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Let's do it.
I'd like to put it out there too that just because you are reaching out to an organization and they're a nonprofit of high stature does not mean that their ethics are intact.
Nope.
Let me just say, we've even built it into our guiding principles that organizations, because we partner with organizations across the US to distribute our tool for free. We don't want anyone to have to pay for our license. One of the things that where we draw the line in the sand hardcore is that if you are an organization that puts profits and fundraising above the mission of helping those that you're supposed to serve, you are not the right fit for us. And we have even had to remove partner members from our partner program because they were not the right ethical fit for our organization any longer.
Yeah.
So do your due diligence. Just because they're the leading nonprofit in your community doesn't mean that they're out for your best interests.
Yeah. Yeah. I did an episode and it was like, I haven't listened to it again because I was like, nope, don't want to listen to myself ramble about that. But um, I had an episode where I was literally just processing some experiences I had where people that I really believed were trustworthy, really believed that our ethics matched, I learned they did not. And how I'm not a survivor, and I am, my nervous system is intact. I am pretty calm and can regulate and all of those things. And so I don't typically live in a state of hypervigilance, right? So I was like, if me being really well educated in this field and able to really be in my wise mind the majority of the time can be duped,
Yep.
we're asking so much of survivors who are just right, like surviving, like literally surviving, to be like, okay, can you assess whether this person and these people are really trustworthy, actually have your best interest at heart, and are going to support you in the way you need to be supported? So yeah, it was a total ramble. I have no idea if it was a good episode or not a good episode at all. Didn't re-listen to it because I was like, it's just Sybil rambling, but turn it on the mic. But yes, it's hard. And I come into things sometimes from this naive, like everyone wants to help people, but it is not the case.
And I bring that up because we have gotten pushback, and it ebbs and flows when we get this pushback. But how dare you charge for your subscription?
Yes. Oh,
You know,
I get that all the time.
yeah, we charge $40 a year. Now, we realize that for domestic violence, you're also a victim of financial abuse. So $40 may as well be $4 million. You don't have it. You're going to feed your
Yes.
kids before you even feed yourself, and you're not going to spend $40 on an app to document. But that's why we built our partner program, so that we have those organizations that are in those communities that can distribute it at no cost. Then I get the pushback of, well, you're a C corporation. You have shareholders. Well, we do have shareholders. That's myself and my co-founder, but that's it. We don't have investors in the company,
Mm-hmm.
because once you involve investors in the company, it's no longer about the mission. It's absolutely about the 10x return for the investors. And 10x meaning if they put in $1, they want to see $10 return on that investment. And so it becomes a money game. It becomes fundraising, just like
Mm-hmm.
nonprofits are fundraising. It becomes constant fundraising for the corporations. Um, we didn't want to play that game. But we also didn't want to have to be fundraising our entire life. And that's why we made the conscious decision not to be a nonprofit. We also didn't want to be at the mercy of a board that may or may not have the interest of the organization at heart.
Yeah.
Like I said, I have a large advisory board, but they don't have controlling shares over the company. They don't have ruling authority over the company. Ultimately, the decisions being made are being made by myself and my co-founder, who is my chief technology officer.
Yeah.
So we can take the ethical high road. We do take the ethical high road. Um, I've gone 5 years of running this company before I ever took any paycheck. And I don't even make minimum wage.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not why I do this. I do this because I'm tired of abusers getting plea bargains down to nothing or walking away scot-free while leaving just a decimated field of, you know, proverbial bodies behind, whether
Yeah.
that be, literal or figurative. Um,
Yeah.
they're leaving a trail of destruction, and it's just making our society worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
And it's time we put a little teeth to this and hold people accountable, and not just the abusers. But when you go to someone in a position of authority and they ignore you and you have the evidence, run it up the flagpole. and
Mhm.
then hold them accountable and say,
Yeah.
I took this to you and I documented that I took this to you and you did nothing.
Yeah, and that brings me to we're going to have a discussion of like what are some of the areas in this field that just need a lot of work. Like what are the biggest challenges? But I think that what I see really is lack of accountability all over,
Yes.
right? And then the systems that are set up to allow or even support. It's not even just allowing it, like supports abuse to continue. I see those as the largest challenges that we have is that there's no accountability across the board in general. And then our systems right now are set up to support abuse to continue.
Yeah. So, what I would say to you is, do you have dogs?
I don't. I have two cats, Shadow and Tuco.
Okay.
I'm not going to clean up after a dog. Like, I got a lot to do. I got
Have you,
two boys at home, you know.
right? Have you ever watched the dog show on Thanksgiving after the parade?
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. So, if you've seen the dog show, you've seen how they, parade around the dogs and everything. Now, what if somebody came up to you and said, "We'd like to pay you to be a judge in the dog show. You can be, a secondary judge, but we want you to be a judge on the dog show." And now you're with all these very professionals. So you're going to go out there and you're going to do your best to pretend to act like you know what you're doing. Because even if it were a cat show, you know your cats, you know, enough to get by to fake it, but you may not know all the nuances of behaviors. Well, why is that
Hmm.
dog doing that? Well, that's a behavior thing. That's the way that particular breed reacts to something. So most of the state, the local court systems that hear family court, and they're usually at the county level. Um, so those judges that are in there are elected officials,
Hmm.
but they have to pay their dues. And usually that means that they're thrown in family court first.
Right? A place that they do not want to be.
They don't want to be.
They don't want to be there.
It's horribly traumatic. They hear a really fancy attorney that they've been friends with for years come in and plead a case about how their client, who's an upstanding citizen in their community, is being accused of abusing his wife when actually his wife is nuts.
Hmm.
Well, what's the judge going to do? Of course, he's going to, this attorney he's known for years. He may have even gone to law school with them, or he knows people that have come out of that law school. They're not supposed to have prejudice, but how can you not? You
Right.
know, there's that bias that's just built in, and when you have a woman who is angry and she's crying and she just dark circles under her eyes and she looks like a harried mess, come into the courtroom, the and I'm just using the example of a he and a she, but and then this well-suited,
Yes.
powerful business person who says, I've been trying to hold this family together, but she's just nuts. I really fear for my kids because I don't think she's fit to be a mother. I think she's crazy. She needs to be committed. And I say all those things because that was my experience
Hmm.
in family court. I was subjected to um, to psychiatry evaluations because I was unstable and I was unfit to be a mother to my daughter.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not an unfit person. I was suffering from complex PTSD from being an abuse victim and survivor for years. And I couldn't help but fall apart every time. And I couldn't help but be angry that he was saying all these lies about me and that he was using his money to buy the best attorneys when I didn't even have enough money to feed my daughter and myself.
Mm-hmm.
and was wasting away to nothing because I couldn't eat. So, what's broken is training, but not training on how to deal with domestic violence cases. Well, if this happens, this is the legal course of action and this is what you should do. No, try a little empathy. I think all judges should work as volunteers in a domestic violence organization.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to work with people, you need to understand the behaviors. And this parental alienation,
Mm-hmm.
that's not a diagnosis.
No,
That
I'm
was
a
made
therapist.
up.
I can say that.
Yeah, yeah. And, did I feel alienated? Heck yeah. But I can't, you can't use that as a basis for something. Um, you have to go after the facts. You have to look at the whole picture. And part of what Victim's Voice does is, not everything that's happening to you rises to the level of criminal behavior. But what it does is it puts context to the situation to show the rising grooming case of abuse, that when it
Yes.
does rise to that criminal behavior, and judges aren't looking at that, they're looking at the incident.
Yep.
They're looking, well, we're not going to talk about anything outside of these blinders, but it's everything that led to that moment that has created the situation that you're in.
Yeah.
So, empathy and situational awareness for reactions of abuse, of what trauma looks like, and there's not a linear path to this, I think is crucially important. And I don't think family court should be the first place that you put judges.
Right. I'm like, because if you think about this, like I was like, do I have I don't have a podcast episode about this yet. We will though. But so like if I call child protection for one of my families, I'm a mandated reporter. Um, if it is a, y'all can't see me, but air quotes, high conflict divorce, 99 times out of 100, they will not investigate that case because it's he said, she said, high conflict divorce.
Oh,
So
did
it
you
is
hear about
less,
Missouri?
so it's less accurate. And so with, which I don't know if I've heard about Missouri, but um, guess what? This is the area where like the risk is actually 100 million times higher. Clearly not the real stat, but the Sybil stat is so much higher when there is a quote unquote high conflict divorce because it's
Yes.
abuse. And so these are the cases that are getting screened out. And yet then we have child fatalities and spouse fatalities, right? Like this is the area where they need to be. So similar to family court, it's not, right? Like unfortunately, who's doing a lot of these investigations in child protection? They are budding just out of social work school, right? They just graduated their bachelor's. They're in their young 20s a lot of times. They don't know these things, right? But it's
Yep.
like these are like family court is not the safest, like the risk is so high in family court, and yet that's where like the newbies go.
Yeah. So I just read this weekend that Missouri has a law that there's new legislation being written now. It's going through the process. But if you are pregnant, you are
Oh, I
not
did
allowed to
read
file for
this.
divorce. And it's
Yes,
like,
I did read this.
you're trying to protect your child and yourself, but you're not allowed to leave.
Yes, you're not
And
allowed to
in
get a divorce if you're pregnant.
Yes, and in Pennsylvania, when I was going through my divorce, um, I in Pennsylvania, if because he did not want the divorce, I had to do a bifurcation. I had to wait 3 years before I was allowed to petition the courts again for a divorce. So I originally filed in 1995 and was not allowed to be granted a divorce until 1998.
Right? Like all of these things that are set up is like, right? I'm like, what on earth? Like, none of it makes sense, right? Like, none of it makes sense. And yet, this is just how it is. And we are supposed to just be quiet and deal with that.
Yes. And the the mandatory co-parenting for
Yes.
domestic abuse situations, um, you're setting up the next generation
Yes.
to repeat,
Right? Like,
whether they're victims or abusers.
yeah, it's like, so, right? Like, all the literature out there for in the therapy world is if there is domestic violence. And when I say that, we're talking about what in the couples therapy world, we call it domestic terrorism,
Yep.
which is a really good fit,
Yep.
versus situational violence. We're not going to talk about that right now because we're wrapping things up, but it is contraindicated, right? Like, it is contraindicated. You do not do couples therapy when
Mm-hmm.
there's elements of coercive control. That's, so if your therapist out there and you're listening, you're actually listening for elements of coercive control, not getting punched in the face. Okay. And yet then co-parenting counseling or co-parenting classes and all of that, it's basically couples therapy. That's basically what it is. And we're saying, okay, but it's okay here. It's okay here to have this arena where abuse can continue. But over there, we are not going to do it.
Yes.
Makes zero
And
sense.
I would say, one of our partner members used to do court appointed child sessions. So the child would come in, and when the court would mandate oversight of the child parent, abusive parent
Hmm.
relationship, and I would say for any judges out there that are listening, if you're going to mandate that, then listen to the advice of the professional who is watching over the situation. Don't blow it off.
Yeah.
It is so counterproductive. It is so destructive to the child's well-being when the child is fearful for having to spend time and does everything to not spend time, but you're forcing them to because there's a court order.
Yep. Yep. It causes such moral injury for the protective parent and then teaches our children that no one will keep you safe. So why should you talk about this at all? Because no one's going to listen and no one's going to keep you safe.
Yep. Yep.
That's what we're teaching our kids right now.
Yep.
All right, Sheri, we could go on for days about all these things. I know it. All my listeners all know this too. But I just am so grateful to have been connected with you and to have these deeper conversations about what change is needed and how we can support survivors. If people want to learn more about Victim's Voice, more about your work, where should they go?
We have a public facing website, which is victimsvoice.app. That's APP. We also have social media on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, all under the name Victim's Voice app. Victim's Voice is all one word. And in social, it's all one word, Victim's Voice app. We also have a whole host of really informational for both survivors and for professionals, free resources and recordings of sessions on our website. So if anyone would like direct access to that, you can't find it yourself, feel free to reach out. Yeah, we'd be happy to point you in that direction.
Wonderful. Sheri, thank you. And if you are driving, I am hoping you did not try to write that down while you're driving. That will all be in the show notes below this episode. Sheri, again, thank you. And we will catch you on the next episode of the Rising Beyond podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.